Welcome to another episode of the Performotion podcast. Today, we have a bit of a special episode. We've just come back from New South Wales Opens Men's States. So I'm joined by Danny, Steve, and David. We're going to just run through the whole day. We're going to go through each class, talk about the battles, talk about the placings and how it all unfolded, and then just give some good insight into what we have coming up, I guess, into Queensland States and then beyond into APU Open Nationals at the start of next year. So I guess starting off right at the bottom, 59 kilo class. If we go through the nominations, we had Jonas Madeira nominated at 535. We had Steve-O and Dion both at 492.5. And then we had Kay at 460. Now, these little fellas, they put some huge kilos on their total. So what we ended up with was Dion coming in with first place with 580. Jonas coming in at second place with 550, and then Barbell K sinking up third with a 522.5 total. So lads, what were some of the key things that happened in 59s?
I think looking at the results, right? Like versus the nominations, Dion came in with a huge improvement to where he was competing last time. I met him at Commonwealth, and based off what I've heard about Dion, he's very much an underdog considering in terms of like how well he's known. Like we see a lot of the battle between Jonas and Steve, and I think that comes down to a lot of like the hype around nationals last year. But Dion is well and truly above at the moment, based off states. Like he put on pretty much close to like 90 kilos to his total based on nominated. That's crazy.
Yeah, wild. I think another thing worth noting that is that's a top 5 IPF World Championship total. That's fifth place.
Yeah, huge. So it's like, obviously that weight miss at Open Nationals. So like I guess we can just see what would have happened if he was to head there. Nominated 492. He did go the 525 at Commonwealth and came second. But I'm sure like if we would have seen him in Malta putting up a performance like that, only 7 kilos behind fourth, it certainly would have been pretty epic to see like another Australian that high up on the international stage.
Yeah, for sure. David, do you have anything to add? You had Stephen in that class, so you would have been paying a lot more attention than us.
Yeah, I was keeping tabs. So Steve didn't have the greatest day. He came in with a bunch of lower body niggles. So he kind of just kept that really, really low and just let the other boys, have a big run. He couldn't compete anyway because it was New South Wales States. But as far as the under 59s go, the standard is just getting raised like exponentially from where it was even just last year. So you can see the strides that all the boys are making, like Dion going from 525 to 580 is massive. And then Jonas going from 535 to 550, 15 kilo total PR, but also having the confidence and the belief to load 275, to even just have like the courage to load that, I think says a lot about where his head is at and mindset wise. And I think it's going to serve him really well going into nationals, where I'm sure these three will be battling it again. I think Kay is also a big underdog. Like, he's been, from what I can tell on his Instagram, he's been messing around with different styles of training and things like that. So to see him getting back into it and really putting his head down, I think nationals is going to be huge, because all these boys are going to be really close in a couple months' time when it's time to battle again.
Yeah.
He was obviously heavily involved with coaching too across the weekend, which is pretty cool to see, like almost every session running around. So heavily involved with New South Wales powerlifting. So yeah, not much happening there in terms of battles, but like you said, Dave, in terms of like what's coming up, with the way these boys are kind of putting kilos on their total, there'll certainly be some really exciting battles come Open Nationals. So if we
might be able to take a 59 to Worlds next year.
Please send someone.
All right, so if we go next up then, 66. So on the noms, we had Andrew True, 620. Carson at 600, we had TN at 560, and then squat merchant Chris Skurung on 555. So bit of a spread on the nominations for the 66 lads, but how it laid out, we had Andrew coming home with the first place with a pretty impressive 631 total. We can talk about it in a sec, but going 10 for 10 with some mishaps on some loading. We had Carson at 587.5. Squat Merchant coming in at 580. And then we had Tien coming in at fourth place, just behind Squat Merchant too, just at the end there. So yeah, lads, I guess Steve, to kick it off, Andrew having a very good day. What do you think of his performance, being his coach as well?
Just a very good all-round performance from Andrew. Obviously the 10 from 10, right, with the bench miss happened, the bench miss low, but that's can just happen. Although it's a whole different color on the barbell, but that's what it is. I'm really happy. I know that there was kilos in the tank there, and I know that he'll bring a lot more to nationals now. And he really wants to fight for that world spot with Yuki. So I think that battle's going to be phenomenal at nationals. And we'll obviously like states for us was just make attempts and we win. We knew that, so we didn't go all out. I guess we kind of figured him out over time, as well as the way that he responds in his taper, and it's pretty predictable now. We know what's going to happen. I know I had more to put on, but I didn't need to gas him at the same time. And the deadlift chip was kind of just, hey, it's there. Like, why don't we just take it? So you can walk away with the deadlift record. Because I wanted to, because obviously Andrew's the big squatter, right? And I wanted to kind of make two little things there, like, hey, you're gonna because you had the bench mishap, it'll be the first time that you ever closed out a fucking bench flight, and it'll be the first time you walk away with the deadlift record. So it was kind of at the same time kind of a joke as well, to be able to do that, because he's not known for his bench or his deadlift. He's more known for how much he squats.
I remember that in terms of how that played out. I think I remember you saying that you'll hold the deadlift record for a little amount of time, and then it ended up that everyone after missed anyway, so we actually walked away with it.
Yeah, that was good. And yeah, closing out a bench flight, that's doesn't really happen for Andrew very often. It only happened because of the mishaps. We got to go after everyone.
Yeah. I mean, looking at that next, we also had Carson coming in second place. He actually dropped down a weight class to compete into this one. So he was originally a 74 in his previous comps. He did nationals as a 74, qualified as a 74, and then dropped down. So, I mean, hitting 600 as a 74 and then dropping down and still coming second, coming away with 587.5. So a little under, well, his previous meet, 12.5 kilos, missing his bench press. So
15 kilos on the bench.
Yeah, lost 15 keys.
Yeah, so he's definitely been able to like hold on to his strength, and coming away second as a 66, especially in New South Wales. Once nationals rolls around, I predict him to be in a pretty good spot as well, coming onto like close to the podium spot as well.
Yeah.
He also missed his squat opener as well, so he missed kilos pretty much everywhere. So I think he would have been well and truly above 600 if he'd gotten, made it all his attempts, maybe just, I don't know, chilled out a little bit on his thirds. But missing squat opener made him take a really conservative jump for his second. So I think it's pretty safe to say he'll be a contender by the time nationals rolls around.
It's a big thing. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do. Obviously, people, I won't say are afraid, but they, I guess, maybe are intimidated by 74s, especially as the juniors and the opens. So it's easier to move up or down. And Carson obviously chose down. So it'd be interesting to see, like, he could go into a surplus, come up to 74s and have a huge increase and maybe be able to push ahead. But I guess we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. And then I guess to close things out, I think first and second were pretty almost solidified based off nominated totals. There was quite a big spread. But the one that was kind of in contention was that final third podium spot between Tien and Chris Gurung. And there ended up being quite a battle for that podium spot. In the end, pretty much Chris came closing it out with 580 total, and Tien was forced to pull out a 270 for the win on his final deadlift to pull into that third position. But unfortunately on the day, it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, like with all these kind of weight classes and battles, we've got to look at the podium going to nationals, but then there's also like that top 14 option too. So I guess we just got to wait and see in terms of what happens with the final few states, and we get to see with people like TN and these people that kind of just fell short on that third place whether they get to go. So it's obviously just that kind of component that it's also all up in the air in terms of nationals. So yeah, just that part, we just got to see how it all plays out. That's pretty much the 66 wrapped up. So if we go through to the 74s next, this was pretty sick. This started to get a little bit more exciting with some pretty impressive lifting in that session. So in nominations, I'll probably just go through like the top 5 or top 6. So we had Ed Zhang nominated at 697.5, Tom Bulk 662, Thomas Del Rosario at 657, Oscar Revolta at 650, George Alex 637.5, and then Danny Lee at 632. Actually, yeah, and then we had Zach ZT 625, and then Raymond at 585. So again, guys, starting to get a little bit more stacked in here. This was an exciting session. So how it all played out, we had Ed Zhang coming home with the dub, 687.5. Tom Bulk, huge third pull to cinch up second with a 665 total. Thomas coming in with, what did he end up on a total?
I think it was 662. So
that's
just
right,
under.
yeah, just short. Missing the huge 295 kilo deadlift there. And then we had the jacked human being, Oscar Revolta, coming in at 4th place, missing quite a few lifts. So lads, I guess Steve, again, just to kick it off, coaching Ed, what do you see there?
Obviously it's a 9 from 9 day, which is good, and we always want to see that. And we didn't. Ed's training 3 days a week at the moment, so we're not doing much special. It's just qualifying at the moment and getting things out of the way because he's got a busy period of life going on at the moment. So we know where he's at. And obviously he had a decent. He totaled more at his last competition, which was only a couple of months ago, but he only hit 1 deadlift. So it was also building confidence back for that, from my point of view, and then just showing him how strong he is when he can go relatively conservatively, because he went RPE 10 on both his squat and bench in that competition as well, like very, very hard, and which cost him kilos at the end of the day because of the deadlift not being able to perform as well as possible. So it's just kind of showing him as well. And Ed's still young; he still needs to learn to compete more and just have that, because competing still is a skill, and just have that ability there to know what's reasonable to take and what's very much a reach, and the repercussions that you can have from that. So our goal was just 9 from 9. We knew that he'd walk away with the same kind of position as Andrew. No one was really going to fight us for third. So first place, I mean, and that's just the way it was. I knew that. We knew Tommy was going to have a big pull, but I knew that if we made lifts, it was going to be too far out of reach regardless.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, right, like as one of the people that were like looking at the nominations, being involved in it, pretty much from like 1st to 5th or 6th, it was going to be up in the air as to like in terms of that second podium spot, because I think Ed was pretty much a bit too far away for anyone. But from securing that 2nd and 3rd spot, it was pretty much up in the air, right? And speaking to Thomas as well after the competition, he missed 250 kilos on his 3rd squat. So he missed like 12.5 kilos on his squat, and he's automatically thinking like, oh man, it's over. That's how close it was in terms of competition. But I think looking at this specific flight, I think experience and making attempts would have been a huge theme as to like who would have ended up finishing, because pretty much all the competitors had missed lifts across this session. Until it came to about deadlifts, and then pretty much by like deads, it's what you can hit and how big you can total by the end of it. But had each lifter made all the attempts that they had planned out, it could have been completely different. Could have been a different story here.
Yeah, we had you in a much better position than I had originally anticipated with you, Danny. based on just how training had gone, just not particularly squat deadlift. They were fantastic, but because you're obviously known for your bench, and we weren't going to be able to bench as much as usual. But because of the amount of lifts that were missed, you were in a much better position than I anticipated going into deadlifts. And I like, as soon as Tom missed that, so I was like, okay, the door's starting to open here for Danny. So I wasn't paying as much attention to Ed because I had him first already. So just making lifts. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to really start paying attention to what I can do for Danny here to try and get him in the best position possible.
Yeah. And even so, like, considering where I was at, because it was so stacked, like even a 9 for 9 day, if you're not strong enough, it's just like too bad, right? So
yeah.
Props to the other guys for just being stronger, still being able to execute when they needed to, especially Thomas's like 275 to pull himself into the second. That was probably like a very high pressure situation. And then Tommy Del Rosario's third attempt there, where he could have secured that second place spot by just going 2.5 kilos and matching on Thomas. But he chose to jump that extra 25 kilos to try and chase up to Ed. But that's the gamble at the end of the day, like whether you want first or second. But yeah.
Shout out 260 deadlift, Danny.
We made it.
Yeah, I think it's
didn't like the blue.
Good to touch on Revolta as well here a fair bit. His total was like wildly reduced from a lot of his mislifts, where he missed out on 30 kilos on bench. So opened at like 130 or 135 or something.
135, yeah.
135, jumped 15 kilos to 150, missed it, and then jumped another 15 to 165 and missed that. And then still, by the end of the comp, he was still only like, I think 2 kilos or 5 kilos behind. He was only 5 kilos behind second place. So if he had made just one more lift, either his third squat, his second bench, or his third bench, he would have been straight into second place and secured up second instead of coming in fourth. So I think there's something to be said there for the whole, if you miss lifts, like people will come and take it from you, no matter how strong you are. Because I think it's pretty clear that he was probably one of the strongest 74s, but his game day executing or his attempt selection just wasn't there on the day to secure a placing spot for him.
I think it's also like, it's very ballsy what Tom did, because he went to second and he could have just secured third. And if he missed that deadlift, he comes fourth. That's how close it was.
Yeah.
Like when I seen him load, I was like, what is going on? Like that does not need to be done. But I was also like, and then he got it and I was like, holy shit, wow, that was cool. But at the same time, I was like, wow, this is playing out so wild right now. Because then Oscar hits his, I was just like, oh shit, there's so much going on. Like, I was like, if these all get missed, like Danny can like almost get third or something at one point.
Yeah, it was clutch. It was clutch as. Just really quick, I missed Oscar's benches. Like in terms of the attempt selection there, were the 150 and 165, like were they in reach? Like what was he missing the bench on?
He did similar jumps at it was either it wasn't first night, I think it was Showdown. I think he competed with me back in December. And he did the same thing. He opened really, really light and then jumped like 20 kilos and then did like a smaller jump after. So I think he probably was good for something around there. Maybe his best in training was around that, but he did a similar approach last comp. And I feel like he must have felt pretty confident after 150 to jump 15 kilos. Like, I don't think that's an accident.
Just to try and stay in the mix.
I don't remember what he actually missed on. I wasn't paying that much attention.
I think by the 165, it was on strength on one of the elbows. It was like a bit of downward movement.
Yeah.
So possibly you could like rationally think maybe that 150 would have been on some sort of technical execution.
That sounds like
were you 660, Danny?
660, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 652. 652, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So the way that it was playing out is, had Tom missed his, I think, because he had something in originally that would have been 2.5 above you. There was like a way where you would have got shot right up if they both missed. Just remembering from the way that it all played out, because I can remember just being like, why did that change? And then it was because he was shooting for second. And I was like, oh, this is cool. It was just the way that everything played out, and then Oscar pulls 280 as well.
Well, it's a 5 kilo spread, right? So we got
Yeah.
665, 662 and a half, and then 660 second to fourth. And then Danny 652. So tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, very tight. Had one miss been made by one of those, Danny shoots above Oscar. I think Tom had 265 in first to lock in podium.
Yeah.
And then shot it up to 275.
Yeah, real quick, I was going to say, like, because I kind of took like the more athlete perspective there, and Steve was looking more in terms of attempts. My perspective was like, I didn't even know what was going on. So I didn't feel that kind of like up and down, like I'm actually ahead, I'm more behind. It was just like, here's what I can realistically hit, and pretty much everything else is outside of my control. Right. Yeah. And it just so happens that, like, because of external things happening, my placing starts to change. But in terms of like mentality and execution as an athlete, like to just go 9 for 9, that's probably your best bet. If you kind of like try to force things or chase people, like that's where that total will start to dip.
Yeah, well, that's like me as the coach as well. I'm like, we're not in a position to push anyone too far at that point. So it was, we make lifts, and if the field starts making mistakes, and that's the way it plays out. And that's almost what started happening. I could just like feel it start happening. And I was like, oh shit, this is playing out really, really well now in our hands, especially when Oscar missed his opening deadlift and then went up. That was a big one. And then Tom took the huge jump, and then Clark's pull, but that was a fantastic pull. That was
his deadlift was so sick.
His pull and Lawrence's pull are probably the two pulls of the weekend.
And again, just with how tight that spread is in terms of like, that top 14 for nationals, like we just hope that, some things get shaken up and we see all of those lifters there next year.
Yeah.
All right, moving on now. Again, it's heating up even more. So we had the 83s. This was fucking let's see, a lot of hype. So we had the noms 83s, Aiden Potts 712 and a half. We had Kana, some talking points here, 710. Bren Cruz 707 and a half, so a 5 kilo spread there on noms. And then we had Donovan 680, Kelvin 670, and then Ewan at 660, which obviously would have just been his qualifier, just getting it in. So placings, what we ended up with, we had Ewan 755 kilo total, huge performance, 300 kilo squat, 175 bench, 280 deadlift, and also got best lifter for the weekend, which we'll get into later. Kana, we had a 735 kilo total. Now he went 310 on his last deadlift for the win on body weight. That was pretty sick. We can dive into that. And then this is where it kind of got shaken up a little bit. We had Bren. Quick note on Bren, really good performance. Just at Perth Cup, he performed really well, and I believe he performed really well again at States. So he had a 720 kilo total, missed 312 and a half, which we can get into with the battle. And then we had Potts in at fourth place. Don't have his total here, but it was 708. Very close. 708, yeah. And then he missed the 310 and a half for third place. So, lads, I guess Ewan, first off, like coming back off that Junior Worlds performance where he had his last crack at, getting the squat record, putting that huge squat up that he's known for on the platform. He rocked up to Newcastle Barbell, put it all together and put up that 755, which was a really good day for him. So shout out to Ewan, as he's moving through into the opens now, definitely one to be kind of looked at in the opens there. I guess let's go Kana, second place, 735. That huge 310 deadlift on the third for the win. He's kind of come out of nowhere. I know, Danny, you can speak of him in terms of when you first saw him at his first competition.
Yeah, so like I met him at Gear Check. Pretty much he was just like standing around, and then someone tells me like, oh, he can't compete. He doesn't have a soft suit. So fortunately, I was in a position there where I was able to lend him my soft suit. And then I got to speaking to him a bit, and I was like, hey, like, where's your background? Things like that. I've never seen you before. And he's like, oh, this is my first competition. I just wanted to get into powerlifting and see where I go. And then fucking blows that first comp up with like a 700 plus total. We're like,
710,
whoa,
yeah. So Warrior of the
710.
West. So that would have been back in June.
Yeah, it's June.
Yeah,
So
and it's just
710 in June.
Wow. First competition, mind you, and like we've
Against his
already
soft
seen
suit.
like, yeah, in my soft suit, he's Chris in my soft suit. There'll never be a total bigger than
don't say
in
that.
that soft suit. Hey, actually, yeah, you know what? Yeah. But that being said, considering what the winning total was at Nationals last year, which was like
Yep.
717, 710 is super close. And considering that's Kana's first comp, like his potential is like sky high. It's through the ceiling.
I heard a story as well. He tried to check in knee wraps for that first comp, and then like, oh, you can't use knee wraps, so he used sleeves.
And then he used sleeves on that day. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's so sick, dude.
and then we had talking points. So we had that battle for third place. Kelvin, Bren and Potts, and we also had Kelvin in the mix there. With that third
sneaky
pull.
dog.
I want to bring that up and give Kelvin some love, because that was very tight there at the end too. So we loaded up to 90,
Yeah.
which it would have been the first pull on the board to lock up that third. Unfortunately, he missed it, and then that opened the door for Brent and Potts to follow after. But yeah, shout out Kelvin. That was a pretty ballsy pull again, and it was very, very, very close, which would have shaken up even more.
I thought he had it. I honestly thought he had
Yeah,
it.
me
Like
too.
when I see 290, I was like, oh, he can pull that. I've seen him pull that. And I knew what it did, but at the same time couldn't make any changes. But I honestly, as soon as I seen 290 there, I was like, oh, he can pull that for sure. And if we miss and he pulls that, we go further down, or Potts goes further down, because like I'd only decided the night before that I'd give Potts a hand.
And then with that, with Brennan Potts, so Bren loaded up 312.5. I was doing some quick maths, and I believe he needed the 315 to get second on body weight on Kana. But I believe, just talking to you lads before the podcast, that the 312.5 was purely just to push Potts as far as ahead. So Potts would have to really reach for that third deadlift. And I guess people are going to be talking about it, but what ended up happening was that Potts had a 310.5 handed in, which, happened. The bar went down. There was a bit of controversy around there, and then Potts ended up missing that. So Bren locked up that third place.
Yeah.
Anything else on the 83s, lads? Some performances amongst the flight? Anything to note?
I just wanted to mention like that the 3 podium spots were all above 100 GL. Like that's insane, right? Like, and I think another thing as well, looking at that whole podium not whole podium, the whole flight as a whole, everyone was above 90 GL. So like the standard of lifting is slowly increasing and increasing. So it's really good to see everyone building up the standard together.
Yeah, I guess while you're on the topic of the 83s, talking about honorable mentions or things to note, was the 83 Ewan out totaling the class above, so totaling more than the highest 93, which I think is crazy impressive as well. Like it just goes to show like how strong Ewan is and how much of an impact he's going to have in this open class as he ages out next year. So I think that's going to be great.
I think his performance is very much washed out over the weekend. I'm not sure why, but I thought it was probably the best performance of the weekend. Just that, like, we got to think about what happened at Worlds, the bombing out, controversy behind that, him underperforming severely there, and then what would have happened after. He's been a little bit quiet on social media, where he was a bit loud before, and then he probably just put his head down, got to work, come out, open 20 kilos heavier, got that 300 squat on the board on his second, and then missed his third, but had that 8 from 9 day, and he pulled 285. He's not pulled anything close to that before. He's not known for his deadlift. He's got no arms on him. So for him to pull something like that, I think is big too. That was the most noticeable thing for me on my end, obviously coaching other 83s in the class, that he's actually developing a strong deadlift that's going to be able to work in his favor eventually as well.
I remember just watching out the back. I think he was like cramping up in his pecs or something, and I saw him sucking on pickles. But he was literally, he ran out of pickle juice and he was just sucking pickles, bloody, like you wouldn't believe it, and it was disgusting. But
you wouldn't believe it.
yeah, you wouldn't believe it. And then when he was cramping up, I was like, oh shit, what's going to happen here? Because I remember at junior nationals, I think he had some pec cramp issues on deadlifts too.
I mean, that's
so
going to happen,
like,
right? If your arms are that short.
Yeah. But he came through and put it together. All right. Moving on. Now we had the 93s. Not as much happening here in terms of like battles and placings and all that, but there's definitely some good talking points with some dark horses there that were kind of snuck in. So on the noms, we had Jesse at 742.5, Boris at 700, Hubert at 692.5, and then Merlin at 685, Lawrence at 682, Michael Wu at 680, and then Josh Kinwan at 680 as well. Now, how it laid out. So we had first place, Jesse totaling 752.5, Josh Kinwan 712.5.
Hubert 712, I think, because he chipped bench 187 flat, I believe was his bench.
Sorry, yeah. 712 flat, and then Hubert 700 kilo total. Couple missed lifts there. We had a miss at 184 and a miss at 270 on deadlift. And then we had Alex there coming in at fourth place, just an honorable mention. Came in at fourth by 2 kilos, and we believe he was in the second flight. I think we can have some clarification there.
Yeah, I think Steve, that Alec guy was in the second flight, and we were real confused.
Yeah, so what happened was it was coming down to third deadlifts, and I picked up on that total as well. So with obviously, like, congrats to Jesse, he won the competition, but I think the battle was for second. After that was between Josh and Bear, and I think what happened, Josh Bear, we just missed lifts. Obviously, he hasn't been competing very long. He's still a junior as well. And it was just a few competitive things and just athlete things on the platform that he just didn't execute well. Because nothing was strength. If you guys remember watching, it was he lifted everything, but missed on technicalities. Like there was things where he just got over aroused. So he almost threw the bar on the ground on one of his squats. But yeah, I think like we had a talk after, and just come down to missed list, but then coming up to third deadlifts, we were still trying to push Josh in a way, but I kind of conceded by the end, and I'd also seen that total that was made in the other flight, and just ended up with the third deadlift to put that out of reach, because it was just if I go to try and push Josh to push too much or pull too much, we miss, then Bear falls off the podium completely.
Again, we don't know what happens with these qualifiers, but Alec had the nommed at 550, so he was like way down the order in terms of the overall 93 nominations.
That's crazy.
And then came in at 697. 697.5. So
147 kilo increase from his nom total. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so definitely just slid in there, and one to look out for sure. Cool. Any other performances, 93s? Again, shout out Jesse. Just good performance for that first place.
I just want to shout out Lawrence.
That deadlift was good.
Yeah. So I mean, like looking at the nominated list, right? Pretty much from third onwards, like 692.5 was third, but from third to fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh was 680. So spreads like 12.5 kilos. It wasn't a lot. And by the time the day played out, it was kind of like, all right, positions are kind of getting secured. And for Lawrence, it was more about just like securing a PR total. Because in the past, he would go like load up whatever I need to do to pull to win. And doing the math, it's like he would have had to go plus 40, 50 kilos. So that was just like unrealistic. So we load up something that just chips his total PR, which is a 312. And this man did like a double save at the knees, grinded it out, and held it. And man, like his deadlift is a weapon. We just need to get his squat and bench up. Unfortunately, missed two of his benches on butt lift, so that's something we need to fix on technically. But yeah, overall, like just where he places in terms of the nominated, like the 93s was extremely competitive. Though, like people we had to look out for, like especially shout out to Nathan Ewan. He was in the second flight as well. He got his total up there as well. And then by the second flight, pretty much everyone started to edge forward, but definitely a very competitive 93 flight.
Yeah. Josh, who came second, performed phenomenally as well, in my opinion. It was
Yeah,
great.
he had a great day.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Home stretch now, the big boys. We got 105ers. Some heated up competition here and some fucking very impressive lifting. So we had nominations, Yanni at 780. We had Randy 750. Samuel Forsberg 747.5. Darcy Shelvin at 740. Foreman 732.5. My lad Jacob 732.5 as well. Daniel Felstein 710. Denzel 700, and then Victor at 680. So placings, we had Randy cinching up that first place, 822.5 kilo total. He went +5 on his third deadlift to 325 just to seal the win on body weight. There was a bit more there in the tank. We had Yanni since moving up to 105. Steve can talk more of this. He is definitely on the rise. Second place, 822.5 kilo total as well. 9 for 9, 312.5, 200, and 310. And then probably dark horse, silent killer, a really impressive performance that I would think we can kind of make note of. Tarzan, Daniel Felstein, the man with the beautiful silky long hair. He came in at third place at 770. So lads, we can get into the rest of the spread in terms of the 3 to 5th battle with Forsberg and Foreman. But I guess, Steve, in the mix with Yanni and Rand, how do you see the first and second kind of playing out across the day?
Okay, so leading into that, obviously I've done scouting on Rand and looked at his performances across the board over the last few years because he's been competing for a very long time. And I know how strong Michael is as well. And I know he has the pull, and the pull, he'll put anything on that bar that he needs to win. But our goal was obviously making lifts, and we almost had to, because I know how strong he is, but I almost had to bank on him missing. But shout out to Matty B, handled Michael Rand phenomenally, not missing a squat, which if you look at Michael Rand's open powerlifting, he's almost notorious for missing third squat sometimes. So that was quite a PR for him. That 305 bench, I do think he missed his third bench.
Yeah, he
It
did.
was a
195.
2.5 kg jump.
195,
Yeah. And then by the time it got to deadlifts, I had 2 plays. It was try and push him out of reach, which I originally just had like a place holding lift in to see how Michael's 320 moved. But as soon as I seen it, I knew that we could not push him out of reach. That 320 moved like there was nothing on the bar. So we didn't have the room to add another 15 to 20 kilos on that. So what I did instead is I brought the bar down for Yanni to 310, which I knew 100% he wouldn't have missed. Didn't end up being hard at all, just to make Michael come out again and hit his third deadlift, because, you know, at the end of the day, anything can happen on the platform. He could have slipped, you know, could have lost grip, anything could have happened. So it was just about making him come out for the third deadlift rather than us going too far, making a huge risk, potentially missing, and the day's already sealed up before he comes out.
It's obviously always tricky, you know, with Rand having that deadlift advantage. But I think one thing to note, just, you know, being involved and seeing it all play out, was that Yanni's performance, they were very good attempts. And in terms of like how he is as a lifter, in terms of like squat, bench, and deadlift, kind of pretty even across the board. Like he doesn't have that deadlift, but he's fucking strong on all 3 lifts. I think in terms of attempts wise, almost like you did all you could in terms of getting as many kilos as possible with the attempts.
Yeah, you got to remember it's his first year as an open, and he's just moved up to 105. Randy's a seasoned lifter who's been in that weight class for a very long time. He's already had big battles before with a lot of other lifters, PA days and everything like that. So it was just for me making lifts and like hate to say it, but banking on Michael not making lifts was our best bet because we knew that we weren't going to come in stronger than him just yet. Give us another 6 months or however many months we have till nationals. It might be a different story, but just on that day and that weekend, we just knew we weren't going to be stronger than him. Yeah, that's also the fact that Michael ran pulled 336, if I remember correctly, last year at New South Wales State. So I knew after that 320 there was something there like that again on this day.
Yeah. And then so we had again already made notes. So Tarzan, really good performance, kind of just locking up that 9 for 9 day, 770. That's plus 60 on his qualifier, which was a very, very good performance. And then I guess, what we can talk about was how the rest of the battle played out with Foreman and Forsberg. Foreman came out for his third deadlift for third place, which what was the weight again? Sorry, lads. It was
317, something like that.
317, I believe. Just missing a grip on the top. And then I think Dave or Danny, a bit.
322, sorry.
Yeah. And then Danny, and a bit more about, Dave, more about like Forsberg and his attempt selection.
Yeah. So they were looking at what they needed to pull to get in front of Felstein, which I think ended up being 337.5. In July at First Nations, he tried to pull 335 to take best lifter, and he got it like a couple centimeters off the floor, maybe like halfway up the shin. And I think they knew that 337 was just not there. So they played it safe and chose to secure fourth, just beat Foreman. So they went from a 322 kilo deadlift to a 322. So just a 2 kilo jump just to push Foreman down to fifth and secure that fourth spot because they knew that 337 wasn't going to be there on the day.
Yeah. Nice. So again, a very impressive lifting in the 105s. Some strong seasoned lifters, but also people on the rise. Look at Yannick, move up the weight class. You look at Tarzan. He's been around for quite a while, but he's still making very, very good progress. So the 105s next year will be definitely one to watch. All right, 120s. Now, nominations-wise, we had Chris Aslin at 792.5. The return of the big flow. Big flow. Florian, look, 790. Ben Yuen, 770. Josh Lavina, Tonganator, 770 as well. And then Charles at 752.5. Placings, what ended up happening, we had Tonganator coming in 820 kilo total with a 300 kilo squat, 202.5 kilo bench, and 317.5 kilo deadlift, missing 337.5 for 840. Chris in second place. Now, unfortunately, Chris ended up getting injured on his third deadlift. So we wish Chris all the best with his recovery. With the way training was looking, he was making very, very good progress. And unfortunately, suffered an injury on his third deadlift, but he still came away with second place with an 800 kilo total with a 315, 192.5, and 292.5. And then Big Flow, third place, Florian, 285, 222.5 bench record bench press, and then 290 kilo deadlift, missing 312.5, which would have been for the win ahead of Tonganator after at the very end there. So I'll keep jumping into Steve, but Steve, Tonganator's performance, what do you think?
Phenomenal performance from Josh.
Yeah,
exactly what we wanted. We went in with a different game plan that changed throughout the day. Obviously, after Chris missed his second squat, which was just a friend around to Chris said, "Go make that third," and the day's already done, basically, because we knew we had the biggest pull of the day. Big Flow was the biggest surprise. That bench, big masters lifter too. Damn, he's a strong man. But yeah, so our game plan with Josh actually changed by the time we got to deadlifts because we hadn't missed the lift. We were in a much better position than we anticipated, and Flo and Chris had both missed squats. So we knew then that because their goal for the second was to actually go a bit lighter, conserve a bit of energy, and then put what we needed on the third, which could have been anything. But then once I'd seen everything play out, I knew exactly how much I needed or could put on the bar to put everything out of reach and seal it up by his second deadlift, which was that 820 kilo total, the 317.5, to put it out of reach from Flo and Aslan, which was just too much for them. And I just said to him, like, you make this and then you can go have some fun on your third, because we know Josh likes to lift heavy weight all the time. So I kind of reined him back a bit on the squat and the bench to make sure that the lifts were made, and then, like, I wouldn't say conservative, but we're making lifts. And then by the time I got to the third one, let him have a say, and it kind of just worked out that the 337.5 was around his full reach attempt, which would have also been 840, which would have been a really nice round number to land on.
The
but then he decided to drop
it.
The 317 very fast.
Flew. That fucking was like a rocket.
Yeah, so 317.5. Based on that, looked like he had 337 all day, but he did something that I've never seen before from his deadlift, and that's just the way that happened. That's the way that I wish Michael Rand's deadlift turned out. But no, Josh decided to do that, and I just played out like that. But he'd already sealed it up, so
yeah,
it's a good day.
I gotta get stronger. Shout out Benny Nguyen. So
yes.
That broke my heart.
Yeah, so you would have seen on social media and stuff. Big Benny, unfortunately, had a little injury in the warm-up room, like right before he was meant to start warming up. Did a doozy to his big toe. Now, in these situations when it's that close to warming up, it is stress city. But I think Ben, handled by Dave and Beth, did as much as they could to keep Benny in contention and lifting amongst the chaos. So shout out Benny Nguyen. That was very impressive just to kind of face that. I gave him a bite of my Simon Says grilled burger while he was getting his toe wrapped up, just to take him away from the pain. And then he just got under the bar and just started squatting. So that was pretty cool to see too.
I remember talking to Danny where Danny had no idea what happened. Someone told me, and I was like, gee, and then I walked over and I was like, went and told Danny, and I was like, gee, what happened? Danny's like, no, what are you talking about?
Yeah, how could you not? He was screaming his head off.
He's like, I just had some yelling and thought he was G'ing up.
Yeah, I just thought Benny was being Benny. I was like, oh yeah, here we go.
True.
Just like normal.
True. It wasn't much different to his normal hype up. He was just in pain. All right, and then the 120 plus to finish off, we had only 4 lifters in the 120 plus. We had Nicholas, Aaron, George, and Raphael. Nicholas nominated at 740. Aaron, who's a 120, who's moved up to 120 plus, he was nominated at 717. George nominated at 680 and then 645. So how it ended up playing out was Nicholas taking the win with a 67.5 kilo total. Sorry, I'm losing my words. A lot of numbers. Aaron Watton, 727.5 kilo total, and then George with a 660 kilo total. So not as much happening there, but congrats to those 3 lads on making that podium and then moving forward to the nationals next year. So to wrap things up, I guess we can talk about overall standings. We've already made note on the 83s out totaling 93s, and the same as the 105s actually.
105s, yeah, out totaling everyone.
105s out totaling everyone. So across those performances, very, very impressive. But in terms of best lifters, so we had Ewan coming home from the weekend with a best lifter overall with a 104.51 dots. Sorry, GL, with missing a squat. We had Kana at 102.56. We had Rand at 102.23 in third. And then we had Yanni at 101.73. And then Ed at 101.29. So again, 83s, top 2 there out of the overall lifters. Just strong performances in that middleweight class. and definitely lifters to be looking out for amongst the Australian powerlifting scene. Obviously, the talking point there as well is, we've got Rand with 1 billion kilos to his deadlift, which could have shot up that GL2. So playing it safe with the podium battle. But yeah, lads, what are we thinking?
283s, 2 105s, and 74. 2 juniors in the top 5. Every single one going over 100 GL now, which is great to see at a state level competition. So I can imagine what the national level competition will be. We might have all top 10 over 100, which would be really cool.
And even across the whole weekend, right? Like at a state level men's competition, there was like 150, 160 lifters. So the talent pool is so large, but then amongst that talent pool, we have like such a big number of lifters lifting to this high standard with that high GL points amongst multiple weight classes, but especially those kind of middleweight classes as well.
I think something interesting to note as well is that if we look at the 105 battle, as we mentioned, they were totaling more than every other weight class, right? So the New South Wales 105s are very, very strong. I think with the new rule that's been introduced, it's going to be very interesting to see what nationals actually looks like. Because I think, if I'm correct, at Victoria States, 3rd place was only a 605 total, where I think 5th place here was like way into the 700s, like I think that's going to be really interesting to see what the 105s look like at nationals and who gets to take those national spots for the top 14. And then in saying that, what does that competition look like now when it's state versus state, when the New South Wales caliber is so high compared to everywhere else?
Yeah, 100%.
I know with the 120s, even it's like, I know in Victoria, they only had like a few 120 lifters. So we might even see from the 120s in New South Wales, like more squeezing into that top 14. We just got to wait to see how the next 3 weeks play out. Sorry, Steve, you were going to say?
Yeah, I think it's just exciting to see the level of lifting going up now in Australia. I think it was really cool. And I mentioned this to Danny a few weeks ago. The level of lifting and the level of training being higher with something at stake going into states. I thought that was really cool. It wasn't people working for a qualifying total and then taking their foot off the gas. No one was able to take their foot off the gas. There was people pushing through fucking injuries. There was people pushing through everything like it was some sort of national championship, because now you've got to make the podium. So although this rule sucks for some people in some weight classes, also made people really dig deep and train hard throughout the whole prep, which I admire and I love watching. So I think that's the win from the new rule, but at the same time, the new rule's a bit silly, and I still think it should be top totals. But it was cool to watch people push, especially in New South Wales, because that's probably the biggest, most competitive state that we have.
Very, very good. All right. Thanks, Danny, Steve, and David for joining me. Men's wrap up complete. We have a women's wrap up, which will be coming out too with LJ and Shania. And then we move forward to Queensland States and then beyond nationals. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next potty.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.